are single race relationship better for people? And it seems that they are. It seems that they are for all races, and that, for example, a mixed race couple, black and white in America, is 7 times more likely to lead to homicide, for example, much more likely to lead to violent abuse, much more likely to be finishing into divorce. And so these data are there, and they tell us that not only is the mixed race couple more likely than whites to have these outcomes, they're in fact more likely than black couples to have these negative outcomes. Sometimes the race mixed couple is the worst option of the 3 possibilities. And this is something you need to take into account if you're dating. I will say, since I've been dating within my own culture and genetic population, I feel so much better. I'm faced with women who have the same feelings as me as to how we should organize our family life and what are our future projects.
Psycho, what do you think on that from your perspective?
Yeah. Well, from my perspective, I don't disagree with a lot of what he said. Actually, I agree with a lot of what he said. As far as I do feel like it's like a black woman is my natural counterpart. Everything's natural there, but I'm also concerned with the whole squeezing out the race thing, especially coming from a black perspective. Because a lot of times what you have with these mixed relationships are these people have interracial relationships, and let's say they get married, have a child, right? Now they have a mixed baby, right? They have a mixed baby. Now, most of the time, more times than not, this mixed child will get older, and this mixed child 9 times out of 10 isn't going to pick a black mate. More times than not, this child is going to pick somebody who is either mixed or non-black. And therefore, which means I can have a child with a white person, have a mixed baby, that mixed baby get older, have a child with a white person, and my child is going to come out not black at all. I'm going to have a non-black grandbaby. That's an issue for me personally. I don't want to have non-black grandkids. I want my grandkids to look like me. I want my grandkids to have my culture. I want them to have our language, our demeanor. I want them to represent me. I don't feel like it's anything wrong with people wanting to have that stance. I'm totally fine with his position on interracial dating because I actually share a lot of those views.
What about people that don't want that stance?
There is evolutionary. Oops, sorry. Do you want to speak?
Yeah, I was just going to say, what about people that don't want that stance? For example, if I want to marry somebody that is black that I fell in love with, and I think mixed babies are beautiful. I think they're some of the most attractive women I've ever seen are mixed. If I wanted that, if I didn't care that my grandchild had either that was black, white, mixed, whatever, if I had no compunction about that whatsoever, it wasn't a factor in my dating thing, Psycho, would you say that I shouldn't do that, or that you just don't care one way or another what somebody else does?
It's not something I promote. I mean, it's an individual choice everybody has to make. I don't think it should be outlawed, but it's not something I promote. It's something again, I'm concerned about racial genocide. I really am. I see it happening right before my eyes. There's a lot of when I was younger, it wasn't a lot of biracial kids in my neighborhood. Now you see a whole bunch of biracial kids in my neighborhood. And again, these biracials are marrying or dating black people. They are marrying and dating non-black people, which are creating non-black people. I'm really concerned with what happened with the Indians happening to us, and I don't want to see that happen.
No, and I do understand that, and I'll get back to Jeff in a second. But real quick, you probably agree, though, in a couple hundred years or 1,000 years or whatever, none of this is going to make a difference as far as people. They won't have the cultural things that we have now. I mean, cultural things have changed quite a bit, even in our own lifetimes. We've had, just within generations, cultural phenomena have changed. Cultural standards have changed. So your great-grandparent or great-grandchildren or your great-great-great-grandchildren, they're not going to care one way or another in that society. Don't you think that society will advance at the point where none of this matters to them? It may matter to you, and I respect that. But you're long gone by then, and society has moved on.
Let me follow up on that too by asking you this, Psycho. Ultimately, what is the issue that you have there? Like, because obviously these people are they're marrying, who they find and fall in love with and they click with. And if that's the case, what does it matter ultimately if we go to a society that doesn't have distinguished races?
I like diversity, and I like the fact that I can go out to New York and go to a certain section of the city and be in Chinatown. I can go uptown and be in Spanish Harlem. I can go a little bit further. I can go up to Brooklyn and be around a bunch of West Indians. I like diversity. And if we have this whole thing where everybody's kind of just one race, where everybody's just mixed and everything else, I don't know. It just don't seem too exciting to me. These mixed person don't look like me. I'm dark skinned black dude. You can't mistake me for anything other than black. And that's how I want black people to be in the future. I don't want to have to the whole race mixing thing is why this whole reparations argument is a little bit a little bit of a problem, because one of the first things he mentioned when we was talking about reparations was the whole mixed lineage and everything else, and his alleged love stories that happened during slavery and everything else. This whole race mixing thing is making this conversation complicated, because now we got to start messing around with DNA percentages and this, that, and the third, which is going to probably end up happening if we do get into reparations. I hold the position you got to be at least 70% sub-Saharan African. By the way, just to throw that out there, if anybody's wondering, because you're not going to find 100% African out here in this country unless they directly from Africa. So yeah, even then you probably still wouldn't find 100% African, but so that's the position that I hold. And I'm just more concerned about racial genocide in the future. Now in the short term, it's not going to hurt anybody. You get with somebody who's black or whatever the case may be. Directly you're not hurting anybody, but in the long term, it will be an effect to the collective.
Jeff?
Okay.
And Jeff, let me ask you this specifically then on that. How long would it take, biologically speaking, to become a homogenized society where there is not a lot of phenotypical variety? Would we even be a species by then? I mean, I would think by that time we're not even Homo sapiens sapiens any longer. We're diversification has taken place, and we're some other species where people aren't going to be thinking this way. Because I think it would take a long time to be that homogenized society, right?
Well, to answer your question, we would need to know the interbreeding rate, and I don't think it would happen in current America. At current interracial breeding, we're probably going to stay separate race forever. There would need to be an event that pushes race mixing more, because the reality is still in America that black people that date black people, Asians date Asians, and whites date whites. As long as that's the case, there will still be a separation. Think about the Jews, for example. A population that has been surviving across the world, traveling from country to country. There's still a genetic distinct nuclei of humanity after hundreds of years of being kicked out of nations and coming back into other nations. Yet they are heavily interbreeding. There's lots of people in the Jewish population. They give up Judaism. They just find a local person and they reproduce with a white person in Europe or an Indian in India. And so they lose a lot of people, but they still remain a genetic distinct nuclei, because those who stay within the community, they have strong ethnocentric preference. So the answer to your question is never, if we keep the current dating patterns. Now, I will say I've been called people have been calling bullshit on my claims about race mixing and effects on health and various psychological measures. So I'm just going to put it right now in the chat. The name of the study, Health and Behavior Risk of Adolescents with Mixed Race Identity. It's a study by by a scientist called J. Richard Udry, and they look at various risk factors for mixed race, and it includes health, general health, fair/poor, waking up tired, skin problems, headaches, sleep problems, depression, smoking, drinking, and all of these measures, they are worse in mixed race adolescents than they are in single races. So there's definitely a medical reason even to justify the point that Sykopathiest was making, which is, yes, we do need to maintain this beautiful genetic diversity on Earth, which includes absolutely different and distinct phenotypes within humanity. I know what's an Aryan, Swedish, white person, and I want them to keep existing, and I want fully black people to keep existing too. We must maintain this diversity. It's a beautiful aspect of our population, and there's no reason to force ourselves to mix.
Okay. Steve, was that all you wanted to?
Yeah, that's all I wanted to know on that. Because I agree, though. I don't think it seems with the mixing rates will ever become homogenized to the point where there won't be any races. I don't see how that's going to happen.
And Casey, I know that we spoke at the beginning. We've had Casey on the show. He was part of the reparations talk that we had, and he said that he wanted to come in and say something to actually both of you. But I'm not sure if he's still Casey. If you're still watching, just tag me and I'll let you come in and ask a question if you want to still. I didn't expect the two of you at all to be sort of agreeing towards the end. Like that kind of came out of left field, so was not expecting that at all. That was quite the curveball.
You've not been familiarized with the association between various forms of ethno-nationalism, and we are both ethno-nationalists, and ethno-nationalism doesn't mean whites are better than blacks, therefore we should dominate the world. It means everyone should handle their own freedom and their own people in the way they want without interference from others. People will often remind the simple fact that there are different genetic populations means that there are different behavior, and that the laws I could vote in the US may be oppressive to Psycho. And I want a world in which people can determine the laws under which they live and the conditions under which they live.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Psycho.
Oh, go ahead. You about to say something? No, I was just going to say, usually when I have these conversations with white nationalists, this is the part where we actually do agree about. When it comes to certain topics, I don't disagree with them on everything. We might be coming from different positions, but the conclusions that we come up with is pretty much the same. I hold the position that separate but equal. That's what I hold the position of. Like, I grew up around my pops, and my pops grew up in the Jim Crow South, and my pops tell me all the time how integration pretty much dismantled the black community, and he laid out a whole bunch of talking points about how that's the case. My pops grew up in South Carolina and used to make trips before I was born. And he first started coming up. I live in Jersey, and he used to make trips up to New York all the time and everything else. And that's how he met my mother and everything. And when he made the trips, he used to catch the bus from South Carolina to New Jersey before integration. He used to catch the bus from all the way South Carolina to New Jersey, and it would cost him $20 to catch the bus from South Carolina to New Jersey. Right after the Civil Rights Bill was signed, it went from $20 to $72.90 something, $72.95 or something like that. It immediately jumped up $50. So what integration did was allow these huge corporations to come into our community and suck our community dry, take all our income out of the community and not put anything in. It killed all the mom and pop stores and everything else that was built on the backs of black families. They all had to shut down. They couldn't compete with the margin prices that the big corporations was coming in with. So integration actually helped white America more than it helped black America, truth be told, because what it did was, again, it killed that economic system, which wasn't huge, but it was better because, again, we was able to keep our money circulating within our community. Now our money doesn't circulate within our community. We barely got black businesses, and the ones we do have is hardly supported because, again, they can't compete with the margin prices. They got to charge everything higher than the other store across the street that's selling things damn near half the price. So where people are going to go, they're going to go where it's cheaper. So it's a problem there. So the only way to do this is to kind of work for ourselves. But go ahead, I'll pass the mic.
Well, I was going to ask on the since you both agree on the ethno-state issue. One thing that I've always when